So today we are here with Ben McGannan at Wellbeing People. Hi Ben.
Hello.
Afternoon Ben, how are we doing today?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Good. Thank you for having us down to your offices.
That's a pleasure.
How long have you guys been here?
20 years now.
20 years.
Yeah, it's a long time. Flies by there.
It does. So we start telling us a bit of a background on the business. A family business.
Yep. So family business. I grew up in what was a family engineering business, manufacturing bottling equipment, and we became main contractors to Perrier in the UK when the whole water industry first took off in the UK. And in 1989, Perrier, through Buxton, started the first water cooler company in the UK. So we built the first line that washed, filled and capped the 22-litre bottles, as they were then, big rectangular bottles. And then in 1992, we decided to start our own water cooler company, which was Water for Work.
Okay. So pioneers back in...
Yeah, it was really interesting to be at the birth of an industry and to have seen an industry from 1989, from literally being a virgin industry to go through consolidation.
Yeah.
And there's virtually zero growth in the water cooler industry now. It's about 1.5% growth.
So the market's completely
saturated.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about your clients. Who do you work with?
On the wellbeing side of the business?
Yeah, all aspects. Or tell us maybe a little bit before that how the business breaks down into the different services that you offer.
Around 2006, we were looking at the fact that the water cooler industry was pretty saturated. Yeah. So we started a complete review of our industry, of our business, and wanted to look at where we wanted to be a decade later, or now, if you like. Yeah. And it was at that point that we kind of discovered that our industry saw itself as delivering water and just being a service industry, but actually what we did was hydrate Britain's workforce. Yeah. And that's what started us on the journey of prevention and health and wellbeing, at which point we developed the concept of working with an interactive health kiosk to engage with people, to try and tell that story, to how could we get people to connect around health and wellbeing. So that led us into then the development of Wellbeing People. Mm-hmm. And along the way on that journey, we separated out the water as a wellbeing commodity. Yeah. We developed a fruit delivery business as a wellbeing commodity, and then Wellbeing People as the strategic wellbeing arm of the business.
Is that to give the kiosks that you talk about? Tell us more about those kiosks.
Yep. So the interactive health kiosk is a means of engaging with people to in the main opportunistically get people to step onto a kiosk and think about health and wellbeing that they probably weren't expecting to do that day. Yeah. So we just a 5 or 6 minute health MOT that is measuring your weight, your body mass index, your body fat content, your blood pressure, your heart rate, and then we have various different kind of lifestyle applications. So we have lifestyle questionnaires or Q risk or other elements that we can add to the kiosk to make that a longer engagement. But in the main, it's a 6-7 minute health MOT.
I got it. So to kind of make that link between hydration or fruit and those things, so that people may have heard that hydration is good for you, but actually the kiosk is going to show you how.
Well, I guess that's where the journey started, but it became apparent to us quite early on in that journey that people were like, no, you're just trying to sell us water. Okay. And we were, in a way, wanting to bring hydration to the fore, but it wasn't just about selling water, which is eventually in the end, although we were Water for Work as a business, when we developed Water Wellbeing as a brand, after a few years of sort of plowing that furrow, we decided to separate out the water cooler brand. So we merged with one of our joint ventures. So we had the Edgar's Water, the Edgar's Fruit, because they're the commodity side of the business, and then developed Wellbeing People as a strategic brand, so we could talk about wellbeing without it being about the fruit or the water.
Yeah, the commodity stuff. Yeah. So it sits on its own.
Yes.
So you've separated those kind of.
It was just too confusing for our customers, I guess, is the reality.
But tell us a bit more about your customers. Who are they? Well, you don't have to name names.
No. So on the wellbeing side of the business, it's predominantly larger businesses, because I think larger businesses have got the message of investing in staff wellbeing. Yeah. So it's predominantly larger businesses, but in reality we do deal with SMEs, we deal with all sorts of businesses from all sorts of sectors. Mm-hmm. Construction's an interesting sector because I think that's a sector that have taken the government's message around health and well-being and worked quite hard at being at the forefront of it.
That's interesting. The construction industry.
Yeah,
that
so
surprises me, actually.
no, it's a, and funnily enough, it happens to be a sector that takes hydration very seriously.
Right.
So if you're on a construction site and there is no water, the site will shut down.
Right.
So they do take a lot of responsibility around the health and well-being and the health and safety. I guess it's born out of the same area for them.
Yeah.
Do you still think there's like a mismatch between people thinking that well-being is this fluffy, nice-to-do thing without actually realising that there's a direct effect on the workforce's productivity?
I don't know, because I think that there's so much evidence. I mean, the government's done a lot of work, Dame Carol Black. If you look at the figures and the stats and the evidence, there's a huge evidence base to say that if you've got a well-engaged workforce, then things like sickness absence are reduced, accidents in the workplace, productivity, longevity, all those factors are improved. And I think that's why larger businesses invest in it more, because they get it more readily and they can take a longer term view of that return on investment. And I think particularly things around the longevity, recruiting and keeping staff is one of the biggest problems that we have. If you listen to the whole Brexit debate, it sits at the centre of the Brexit debate. We can't get enough people that want to work in our companies. So, and if you're in big cities, if you're in London, recruitment's a really, really big issue.
Absolutely.
So I think that if you just took that measure alone and said that being a good place to work, that engages with your workforce, that takes well-being seriously, it's another reason why you might want to work for that organisation.
Absolutely, and I think there's a question: how many companies would link well-being to their recruitment brand, essentially?
Yeah, I think quite a few, but certainly our customer. But I guess we're talking to people who already get that. And I think if you're talking about SMEs, and I've sat on the phone and done quite a bit of telesales, just trying to engage people in a debate around, can we come and talk to you about well-being? And you get a lot of people who will just say, I'll pay their wages, mate. What more do you want me to do? I'm not interested. But I think even in the SME sector, there's increasingly people that either get it because they've had a personal experience and they know what an impact it has on themselves, and therefore they can know that the impact it's had on them could have an equal impact on their own staff. And it doesn't take long to work out then, wow, that would be amazing if everybody had that same impact. But it is an investment, and I think the hardest thing about wellbeing is it's an upfront investment and the payback is over a period of time. And if you're an SME, how do you really measure staff longevity versus how much you're going to spend on, say, engaging your staff in a health check and giving them supporting products and interventions that will make them feel better or be better or happier or whatever the measure may be.
So tell me a little bit about how you've seen the industry change over the time that you've been in business, which is a really long time.
So in terms of well-being, I don't think it has changed an awful lot. I think actually it was interesting when we were starting out in 2006, Gordon Brown was then talking about the future of the NHS being unsustainable and that we had to invest in prevention, not cure. It's exactly the same messages you're getting out of the government now. Those messages haven't really changed, but I think what really set us back was 2007, Lehman Brothers, the collapse, the economic collapse, where people were perhaps up for the conversation, but at that point people were battening down the hatches, and it's the biggest recession in my lifetime. So that I think set the whole agenda back a long way. So austerity, I think austerity has been a
delayed well-being.
Interesting though. It's interesting because although austerity did do that, I think it also galvanised us to thinking we've got to be smarter about the way we do things. So I think with the way the public sector finances have been, and the local authorities, the NHS, well, say less the NHS, but the cuts in the public sector have meant that people who traditionally wouldn't have worked together have started to come together. So we've seen a greater appetite for collaboration between the private, public and third sector within the space of health and wellbeing, for sure.
Do you see any sectors that do it well? Can you see any standout kind of sectors?
So I think construction for me would be the leading sector that as a complete sector that we see the most commitment to doing that.
What's driving it? Is the health and safety driving that the focus on health and safety?
I'd like to think that they see the return on investment. I mean, if you take the construction sector, it's got one of the highest cases of male suicide. So it's quite a macho environment. It's like the railways. The railways is the same. You've got a lot of a higher percentage of male suicide in those sectors, and I think under 45 years, suicide's the biggest cause of death for male in the UK. So that as an issue is a big enough issue in a sector that size to go. We really need to, because there's obvious links to physical and mental well-being for them in that regard.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit more about how you think the sector will continue to change into the future. Can you see any trends that are on the horizon, or
what would you like to see?
Yeah, what would you like to see? How do you hope it will evolve?
Okay, I mean, I'd really like to see the well-being space become an industry, to actually be galvanised, to have a trade body, to be represented as an industry to the consumer, to have a unified message, to have quality standards, to have barriers to entry for people that weren't prepared to be scrutinised in what they do, and to have something, the equivalent of in the old days you wouldn't have bought a holiday without it being able to approved. I think that the wellbeing industry needs something along those lines, some sort of trade body to represent well-being specifically, as opposed to health. And it's that prevention versus cure bit. There's nothing that really represents the prevention industry
or defines it. I think when we talked before, didn't we, that you said there is no real well-being sector. We kind of both were like, there isn't. No, there isn't. And I think people, that probably sounds confusing for us from outside the industry, because it's probably a mishmash of all the other industries that people think it's taken care of.
It's a word that gets used a lot. And you made the comment earlier about the fluffiness. Because what does well-being mean? There's a lot of, it's like the word holistic, isn't it? A lot of people will talk about holistic therapies, or it's vague, and it's used
or it means
in
different
so many
things to different
contexts.
people. So tell me a little bit about the distinction between well-being and wellness.
So I think the wellness sector is measured and defined. So for me, the wellness sector sits around gym membership and the products that are targeted more in a B2C way to consumers that
physical health more than mental health?
Yeah, I would say, yes, I'd definitely say it's that kind of the running, the jogging, the gym, those kind of industries, and that's huge industry. It's a huge industry. But well-being in the context of prevention and actually engaging people and empowering them to take responsibility for their own well-being and to make better, more positive choices. And the interesting thing is that in conversations, in all the work we do, it's not like people don't get it. We all know what's good for us. It's just some of the things that are not good for us are more fun, maybe. And so we make choices that aren't the right choices for our well-being, but they might be the right choices for having a good time.
Yeah, so would you say that there's a split in terms of mental health and physical health in terms of well-being?
Definitely, but they're also completely interlinked. If you take something like eating fruit and eating a rainbow, having a multicoloured mix of fruit and veg in your diet has a huge impact on your mental health. I think it's dangerous to separate the two out completely, because then you end up with things that are inevitably intertwined, being dealt with as total separate entities. And at the centre of well-being, it's our movement, our physical movement, what we fuel our bodies with, make such a big impact. So sort of that energy in, energy out, and the quality of the energy in and the energy out that relate to our physical and our mental health.
The fuel that you're feeding your body.
So thinking about the health of your business, tell me a little bit about what does success mean for you in your business? What does a healthy business look like for you?
What does a healthy business look like? I think a business that is actively engaged with their workforce, with their staff. We're wanting to create an environment where people feel looked after, feel engaged with, feel safe, feel happy. All the issues surrounding what you would think of being a nice place to work are kind of basic human things, really.
It's amazing how many miss it though, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, as I say, we talk to a lot of people who don't, so it's great. So, yeah. But,
I was going to say, have you got any examples of things that you do here in your own business that you find work well?
well, we use all the things that we use with our clients. So in fact, we test a lot of stuff on ourselves first. So I mean, I think we have quite a lot of engagement around around the kiosk, we have a wellbeing station that's kind of on here earlier. Trying to engage people, have a bit of fun, have conversations around the topic. Workshops, away days, just working as a team. We support the Kent business games, and we have a team that enters that every year. That's a great initiative run by Kent Sport, which is just getting businesses to go out together and compete in some fairly random activities. Yeah. But just having that engagement, I think the conversation, the engagement, the
fun you mentioned as well. Because I think you can push people into these things, can you? You can't, because you can't just say, right, everybody, you've got to go and have. I don't think that's the right way to engage.
No, we're all different, aren't we? So what somebody might like doing, somebody else might think, oh my God, that's the last thing on earth I'd want to do.
Yeah, and there'll be a longer journey to get them to that place.
Yeah. Actually, I went to a great workshop once where there was the guy who led the workshop at the beginning. He said, right, at some point I'm going to get two of you to stand up, and I'm going to ask one of you to sing a song and one of you to tell a joke. And you could feel the atmosphere in the room was like really kind of strange. And he kept that going as a threat through the whole thing. And then at the end, he explained why he'd done it. And he said, there's basically three types of people in this room. There are the people who were going like, oh, please be me. I want to sing a song. I want it to be me. There are the people who are like, if you pick me, I'm just going to tell you absolutely no way. I'm not going to get up. I'm not going to do it. Yeah. And then there are the kind of people in the middle of that are like, oh, I hope it's not me, but if it is, I better think of a joke, or am I going to sing a song? And I think that's the thing with wellbeing. All those three things, that we all react in one way or another to a certain thing. So if I told you had to go and do a sport event as a team, it might be the last thing you want to do. So I think that engagement's about understanding people, talking to people.
And I guess some people are motivated more by fear, aren't they? So if you tell them, if you don't do this, it's going to have this consequence, or if you do this, it will have this consequence, that motivates them, whereas other people are kind of led more by the reward and the positive outcome. Yeah,
I think that's the whole thing, that you, I guess in an environment of where you're trying to create wellbeing, you've got to understand what people want. So you've got to have a conversation.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you a little bit about what impact do you seek to make through your work? What's the kind of end result that you're seeking?
Okay, so I think there's different answers to that. So we have the business to business side, the commercial side, where obviously we're trying to engage companies to be able to make a difference to their staff, and that's about return on investment. It's kind of doing well by doing good kind of space. Yeah. The area we're really passionate about in legacy terms is school children. Mm-hmm. We think that working in improving health and wellbeing in schools, there's not a huge budget for that. We do quite a lot of work with the social housing sector trying to develop initiatives around wellbeing in schools. And I think if we're truly going to change the future of health and wellbeing, then we have to start with young children. Yeah. And to that end, we're doing some really good work with the Mason Mile, which is the Mason Foundation, which has developed an intervention which is about getting children and parents from areas of health inequality, just who probably are who may be the furthest away from being active and having good wellbeing practice, and just getting them engaged of having a bit of fun, just trying to walk a mile initially as a family. So we've been developing that, and we've been talking with Sport England and looking at areas of how we can develop that as almost a gap between where you have the Daily Mile, which is an initiative to try and get children in schools to walk a mile every day.
Scotland, isn't it?
Yeah, it started in Scotland.
Yeah.
It's backed by Sport England, and it's around the country. But also in terms of parkrun. So parkrun, again, another fantastic initiative. You see it in most towns, lots of people every weekend getting out and doing their 5K runs. Yeah. But it tends to be people who are already into it. There's a lot more lycra. It's probably more middle class than from areas of inequality. Yeah. So we're trying to bridge that gap and do something in the middle of that actually engages people who perhaps most need it, and are furthest away from it. But that bit of a parent and a child doing something together on a regular basis. What
is the thing that drives you in your business? Why do you do what you do? What keeps you going on a tough day?
I just love doing it. I love everything about my job. I've had the luckiest career I could ever have had, so I just love work. I love my job. I love what we do. We make a difference. It's fantastic.
Make a difference. I like that. I like that. And in terms of future casting, what other things can you see happening on the horizon?
I think, going back to what we were talking about earlier, I just think that the wellbeing space is as much a virgin space today as it was 12 years ago for us. So I think when I look back at the water cooler industry, when that first started in 1989, within 2 or 3 years, we had a trade association, we had people talking about quality standards, we were galvanised as an industry, we led the way as an industry, all of those things. I actually thought that would happen pretty early on in wellbeing, but perhaps the difference is that back then you had someone like Perrier that were driving it, and they were investing a lot of money, and therefore all the entrepreneurs that were also starting it were happy to galvanise around that. Whereas that doesn't exist in the wellbeing space.
So do you want to see other people popping up in the wellbeing space?
I think we want to galvanise those people who are in it and get a conversation going so that we can actually start to look at how are we perceived as an industry? How can we be more of an industry? How can we deal with those quality standards? How can we have a united message so that the consumer, back to your fluffy comment again, what does the consumer see? That's what we need to drive that and lead that. But as a sector, it's very much just a lot of SMEs fragmented doing our own things. So
it's galvanising.
Yeah.
Okay, last couple of questions. What do you think is the most vital quality for business leaders today?
That's easy. Just integrity for me. I think in a world where, again to politics, but where we see Brexit, where we see how disenfranchised people are with what they don't perceive to be real or for them or about them, I think business has a real need to lead with integrity.
Nice. Yeah,
definitely.
And last question, what top tip would you give people, perhaps starting out in business or early on in their journey?
I'd say be happy. Do something you love. Don't worry about the money. If you love it and you're good at it and you enjoy it, everything else will come with it.
Brilliant. Don't chase the pound note.
Definitely not. Do something you love.
Fantastic. Yeah. Wonderful.
Great. Thank you. So if people want to find out more about your business, where should they go?
www.wellbeingpeople.com.
Great.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Ben.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.